Hi, I'm Malcolm Graham Wood, and today I'm doing my CEO interview with Core London TV. Today, my guest on debut is Will Holland, the new CEO of Europa Oil and Gas. Firstly, Will, welcome to Core London, and many congratulations for taking over as CEO of Europa Oil and Gas.
Thank you, Malky. It's great to be here, and I think it's a great time for the company to be taking over as well. So I'm looking forward to talking you through it all.
Good stuff. First of all, as normal, I would love it if you could start with provide the viewers with an overview of what you've taken on at EOG.
Great, of course. Thank you for having me. So Europa is an onshore and offshore UK focused, UK and Ireland focused oil and gas exploration, production and appraisal company. And we've got a diverse portfolio of assets that include onshore UK production, which not only covers our costs, it generates material income for us, and has plenty of development potential associated with it as well. In addition, we've got an offshore UK asset, which is in the appraisal phase. We drilled an appraisal well on the Serenity field last year, at the end of last year, which unfortunately didn't come in as we'd hoped, but it has provided us with some very valuable subsurface data, which we're now incorporating into our model to understand how to develop this. And then we have offshore Ireland, which is the real blue sky, and it's tremendous blue sky as well, because the value potential in offshore Ireland is really exciting. And all of these assets have got things happening on them over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. So it's a very exciting time for the company.
Excellent. It would be nice if we could maybe dive a little deeper into those individual assets as you see them. So why don't you start off with onshore UK?
Definitely. So we've got 4 assets onshore UK. There's 2 of them we operate, Crosby, Warren and West Fursby. These are mature assets. They're very stable production. They're sort of late life, so it's about optimizing costs and extracting as much value as possible. But they're very useful assets. We've got an interest in another onshore UK field, which we're not on the license, but we have a royalty interest in, effectively. And then there's Wrestle, and Wrestle is where most of the value comes from and most of the development opportunities available. Wrestle, we're in partnership with Egdon Resources and Union Jack. Egdon are the operator, but within this JV, we operate closely together, and we all contribute to that. So we're all very close to it. Now, the field was brought onto production over a year ago and has exceeded everybody's expectations. We're way above what we thought would be our baseline production. So we've sort of come back to it and gone, well, why is that? We've got 3D seismic over the structure. We've gone back and we've looked at the 3D seismic. We've reinterpreted the 3D seismic, and we've come up with a new map. And there are 3 horizons on Wrestle. The current horizon is the lower horizon. It's called the Ashover Grit. And then you've got the Penistone horizon above that. At the beginning of the year, when we announced our plans for the year, we talked about developing the horizon above it, the Penistone, and putting 2 wells into that. From our remapping it and from looking at the existing production, the fact that it's producing so much better than we'd expected from the Ashover Grit, we've realized actually there's more there than we thought originally. So it most likely warrants another well into the Ashover. So technically, it all looks very robust. We're now going through with Egdon and Union Jack a process of saying, okay, what do the economics look like? And from that, we'll then approve a development plan to develop the Ashover. That'll happen first, as opposed to when we said at the beginning of the year when we said we'd do the Penistone. So it's probably going to be the Ashover first. Then we're going to follow that with a Penistone well. And there's still going to be 2 wells into the Penistone. And then we're also looking at putting a well into Broughton North, which is a prospect on the other side of a fault to the northwest of Wrestle. So this is all lots going on there. there's some uncertainty around the timing because we don't know when we're going to get all of our permits for it. This is from an existing pad, so it's from the wrestle pad. So there's nothing contentious about this at all. It's doing what we've done in the past. But we are going through a process to permit this, and that will largely govern when we actually get to drill these wells.
So it does look extremely exciting there, and it'll give you a good deal of good cheap production and rising and opportunities elsewhere on the license and adjacent licenses. Slightly different kettle of fish is offshore Ireland, but a year ago or 2 years ago it may not have been so front and center, but it's getting much more exciting now, isn't it?
It certainly is. I mean, the Irish offshore used to be a very it used to be an area that where it had a lot of operators with acreage in it. The Irish government decided that they weren't going to issue any more licenses, and a lot of people have exited on the back of that. However, the crisis in Europe, the invasion of Ukraine, and the subsequent issues around the Nord Stream pipeline, and Ireland's energy mix as a whole, has really brought into security of supply as a major issue in Ireland, and it's also an issue around what is the most environmentally friendly way of generating energy in Ireland, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But just from a security of supply standpoint, Ireland's at the end of a European pipeline. It doesn't have any LNG capability, so it can't import LNG. It relies solely on its own domestic production in Corrib, which isn't very much. And then in addition to that, it uses gas through the interconnector from the UK. Now, they're realizing now that actually that's not a great situation to be in, and they need to help diversify their supply. And also another thing to point out is Ireland is part of the European Union, and the European Union has charged their members to look for exploration opportunities that can be brought online very quickly. So the European Union themselves are saying to the Irish government, actually, you should be looking at what potential you have. So when we look at security of supply, when we look at how close we are to Corrib, and our asset Inishkay is only 10 kilometers away from Corrib existing infrastructure. There's plenty of ullage in the Corrib system. It came online about maybe 10 years ago, and it's not that long. And it's now in decline. It's now in natural decline. So there's plenty of capacity through that system directly into the Irish network. So any discovery that we would make could be brought online very quickly. And then the last really important thing to say about Ireland, and I would urge people to go and look at our website, because there's lots of interesting technical input on our website that gives more detail on this. This is all in line with Corrib, so this is an extension to Corrib. It's the same play, it's the same horizon, it's the same mechanism. So it's not wildcat exploration, it's near field exploration, and it's an extension to Corrib. So we're very confident about that from a technical standpoint. And given the change in mood in Ireland now politically, and we've seen this in the Irish Parliament, where the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Ireland, stood up in Parliament and he talked about existing assets adjacent to Corrib that could be tied in very easily. There's only one of those, and that's ours. So the Irish Prime Minister is aware of our asset and is saying this is a potential source of gas for Ireland to help our security of supply issues. So we're very confident about the future of Ireland now.
Excellent. I'm getting very excited about that, to be honest. I really think that it's going to be a very, very interesting play for you guys. You've got offshore UK still there, haven't you? Which you're in with I3 on.
That's right. And actually, I mean, that's how I originally got involved with Europa. My background is I'm originally technical, and then I went on to work in finance, where I was financing appraisal type opportunities, where it was sort of risking balance sheet to look at appraisal development opportunities. And this sort of was one of the type of things that I would have really been excited by. So just for people that aren't aware, this is the Serenity asset where we partnered with i3 with the original licensee, the original licensee, and we farmed in for 25% and gave them a full carry. And we drilled an appraisal well, which was quite a bold step out well from the original discovery, on the basis that we thought we had a 70 million barrel accumulation. And when we drilled it, the biggest risk was because it's a stratigraphic trap, you can't see closure, it pinches out. So where are these sands pinching out? So the biggest risk was the sands had pinched out and there was no sand presence. And that's exactly what happened, unfortunately. The sands had pinched out. And what we thought could have been a 70 million barrel field was not. It was just the original discovery, which is still a sizable discovery. We're sort of talking about 10 million barrels type discovery, but it wasn't the 70 million barrels we thought originally. But what was really important about the appraisal well is it provided us subsurface data that allowed us to recalibrate the subsurface model. And we had these hydrocarbon indicators. We had this anomaly that showed that Serenity was one field. When we recalibrated the model on the back of the well data, suddenly it looks like Serenity and the adjacent Tane field are one field. Now Tane is operated by Repsol Sinopec along with Viaro as their partners. So we're currently with our partner i3 Energy engaged with them to talk about how do we monetize this, and is that a single well tieback to Tane? Tane hasn't been developed, by the way, and Tane will be developed to Blake to the south, which is also a Repsol Sinopec Viaro asset. So is this a develop Tane, you tie back Serenity to Tane and Tane to Blake, or do we unitize the whole field? If we unitize the field, then there's a discussion around unitization and how do you come up with the appropriate percentages. And we're in those discussions right now, and hopefully over the course of the next quarter or so, we'll be able to come to the market and to talk about the results of that.
So Repsol and Sinopec hadn't really thought about Serenity being a part of the sort of joined up, as it were, until you had a look at it with your enhanced equipment. Yeah?
I think that's probably right. They were certainly sitting and waiting to see the results of Serenity because they hadn't put in a development plan for Tane yet. So they wanted to see what happened at Serenity to say, well, how do we develop this? And we're now in those talks, and let's see.
Good. Well, that's it for the time being, because of course you no longer have Morocco, which is where the impairment came in the figures that you've just announced. But I would like to move on to two things now: the management and the figures and the finances. So you've got a very strong management team. I know that you've if I could point out that you've just arrived as CEO, but you were CFO before. You've got the previous CEO on the board as a non-exec. The chairman is extremely experienced, and you've made one other appointment at COO level. So I'm very excited about your board. So do tell me about it, or tell the viewers about it, please.
Yes, I think when I started working with Europa originally, I was consulting to help raise the money for Serenity. And I was asked to join on the back of a successful equity raise, and I've since leaving banking in 2013, I've consulted I've been most of my time has been consulting. I've had a couple of CFO roles, business development work, but most of the time it's been consulting. So you get to see a lot of management teams. You get to see how a lot of management teams work, and without sounding arrogant, I do occasionally get asked to join teams, and the majority of the time I turn it down. The difference with this team was the quality of the team, and the chairman Brian I've worked with him when I was in banking. I worked with him when he was running Petroceltic, and actually prior to that, I came across him when he was at Tullow. And Simon Oddy was at Gemini when I was at Macquarie, and we were actually competing for different projects. In fact, at one time, we'd funded the Brea project, one of the partners in Brea, and Simon at Gemini had funded the other partner at Brea. So we were both looking at very similar assets and had a very similar sort of outlook. So the sort of the quality of the team, and for such a small team, it very, very good governance, very good process, very good protocols. You know, we'd look at things properly. There's no sort of we're still nimble because we're small and we can do things quickly, but there's a proper process and a proper way of doing things. I also come from a big international company. Originally, I was trained by Halliburton, where you're taught to do things in a certain way when you start. So the team that was what really attracted me initially, and then the asset base as well is great. The strategy is good. So this brought everything together. When I was, Simon decided to retire. He actually came out of retirement to be CEO, so he was quite keen to go back into retirement to and work on his golf handicap. So I was very pleased to come out on top of a process, and again, talking about good governance, there was a process that was run, and I was included in that, and I came out on top of it, which was great. I was very pleased to take on the CEO role. And to me, because we were losing Simon, who's also a petroleum engineer, or losing Simon from an executive standpoint, we still have him as a non-executive standpoint. As a board, we were sort of actually we need to shore up this technical role. And Alistair Stewart had been consulting for Europa for 12 years. And I was very pleased when he agreed to come on as a full-time COO. So I think, between myself and Alistair, we have a lot of experience. And Alistair sort of flies under the radar a bit, but if you look at his pedigree, he's got a tremendous pedigree. Started at Enterprise, so he knows Brian, he knows Simon from his early days, and then he went through a period where he was Tony Buckingham's right-hand man for sort of Heritage, all of the new business ventures which he did there. Very, very strong technical, but what I really like is he's commercial as well. So a lot of very strong technical people sometimes lack that commercial element. Alistair has an MBA. He's very, very commercial. So I think he's great. He's a great addition to the team.
Brilliant. Well, let's move on swiftly to finances. I think we'll take it as read that everyone's had a chance to look at your interims, and I think it's very fair to say that it's a cracking set of figures that you've managed to come up with in your first set of figures. But clearly, you're taking no credit for that, of course, apart from the CFO role. Yeah. Importantly, as you've described them as being in companies in rude health, net cash, strong free cash flow, and so on. Just give us an idea of how you're looking, how your commitments, your ongoing commitments are going to be funded, and so on. If you wouldn't mind, please, Will.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, our cash position is we've got over £5 million of cash in the bank. The development plan, the activities that we announced at the beginning of the year, included the Wrestle activity, where we were assuming we'd get our permitting required for this year, and then all of the activity that we were going to do on 419 in Ireland. Serenity is more of a sort of desktop stage where we're at negotiations, but there are still some costs. But most of the capital requirements for the year are focused on Wrestle development at the moment. Now, as I said earlier on, the technical committee are recommending an adjustment to the development plan, which the operating committee will assess and more than likely approve in the coming weeks. Don't have those exact numbers yet, but I'm very confident from the rough numbers that I do have that we're fully funded for all of that activity, and there'll be no need to go to the equity markets for any of that at all. So, and then in addition to that, what doesn't change is the gas to wire development at Wrestle, which was already within that project. So we'd see an increase in production from the existing production just by implementing that. So we are looking still at strong cash flows for the year, and we're fully funded. So
Great news, and
should be another good year.
Great news. Are you affected either way with the energy profits levy, with investment or taxation at all, Will?
We are subject to it, but we are shielded from it. So there are no, our exposure to it is completely shielded by our capital commitment. So when we drilled Serenity, although that was obviously a disappointing result, the money that we spent on Serenity has completely shielded us from the energy profits levy for this year. And then any further development in Wrestle, which we've got planned, will then shield us going forward beyond that. So you won't see anything being paid on our behalf for the energy profits levy.
Good. And how do you see Europa in the context of what I would call sort of the contribution to the UK onshore hydrocarbon process itself, the energy equation producing from onshore in the centre of England must be good.
Yeah, I mean, these are very valuable barrels. Where we're located, we're very close to the refineries where we sell our crude. So when you look at the operating costs compared to the revenues which we're generating, they're valuable barrels. We can see a lot of running room in that whole trend. If you go to our website and look at the presentation on our website, you'll see what is a slightly simplified cartoon, but it does show the trend from Crosby Warren going through Broughton, North Broughton to Wrestle.
Yeah,
it's the area that we're developing, and you'll see, we're right next to Scunthorpe, we're right next to the Inningham refinery. The gas that we produce out of the associated gas that we produce can be used for power generation from the British Steel plant. We're a valuable part of the energy mix, and I think one of the things at Europa that we're trying to do is trying to say, okay, how do we fill domestic supply? We're looking to try and satisfy domestic supply. So that is one of our focuses.
Oh, great. Well done for that. Briefly, you've got some institutional shareholders, but EAG is primarily a retail-owned company, from what I can see. Are you planning to meet the investors once you've got your feet under the table?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, because I was involved in the original equity raise that we did for Serenity, I met a lot of them in that process already, and yeah, so we'll continue to engage with the institutional shareholders. I would like to bring more institutional shareholders onto the register. Typically, they don't buy off market; they typically come into equity raise, and we've got no plans for an equity raise. So I think for the time being, what we're looking at is to maintain our engagement with the retail sector. And many of our retail investors will be aware that we did we hosted a retail event last summer. We'll look at hosting another retail event this summer where you can come, and it'll be in central London. You can come and meet myself and Alistair and some of the other technical team and really dig into the detail of the assets and what we're trying to do as a business and where we see the value. Yeah, further engagement with the retail sector is absolutely on the cards.
Smashing. Listen, we've run out of time. I'm afraid that it's been a great half an hour, just under, I think. So I'll have to do what I always ask CEOs to do when we wrap up, is to say, putting all those things together that we've talked about. Could you give us your vision for Europa Oil and Gas over the next 12 to 18 months, please, Will?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because I think one of the things that here is we've got a lot of activity going. You look at every single asset that we have. There's nothing sleepy sitting in the background here. We're working on all of them, and you should see activity coming from Wrestle, the development of Wrestle. You should see activity coming from Serenity as we establish how we're going to monetize that asset. And I very much hope you'll see activity coming from Ireland, where we can announce a successful farm out in due course. Every single one of those events will be significant and should help really drive the share price.
Great stuff. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Your first results as CEO, your first CEO interview with us, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Great.
So I've been Malcolm Graham Wood. Today I have been doing my CEO interview with Core London TV. My guest on debut has been Will Holland, the new CEO of Europa Oil Gas. I'd like to thank him for joining us today and talking us through the situation over there. And I'd like to thank you very much indeed for watching. Thanks very much, and see you again next time. Bye now.